Frank, I can't hear. Something's wrong. I can't hear.
Okay, thanks everyone for being here, and thank you for those who are attending by Zoom. This is the April 19th meeting of the Bridge Aesthetics Committee. Again, welcome all of you. We've got here at the meeting Walter Somerville, Tom Friss, Jane Alexander, Amy Blake, myself, Mason Blake, and via Zoom, we have John Hinkle, Robin Melvin. That's who we've got in attendance and does constitute a quorum, although I don't know that we'll be transacting any business per se today. Let's take just a moment before we begin and have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. So I have a motion to, or just would anybody like to otherwise discuss the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Got a motion by Jane, second. Second by Tom. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. The next section is approval of the minutes. We don't really have any minutes in our prior meeting since it was 4 years ago. We did approve at that meeting a final report to the commission at the time, the town council at the time. Forwarded a copy of that report to each member of the committee, just as a reminder of all of our past efforts and where we sort of have left the bridge many years now ago. Next item on the agenda is public comment. There are no members of the public here, so we will skip public comment unless somebody comes in late. Likewise, there are really no committee member reports other than, I guess, myself. And I'll take just a minute and advise everybody that I guess 4 or 5 months ago, I was appointed to serve the final year of the term of Alice to the town council, and have since been serving in that role. A month or two ago, after sort of getting settled, I asked, "Here's the bridge," and in particular, did that in the context of attending going over some financial statements and realizing that money that was in fact being in the bridge in an appropriation or what do you call it, an account to pay for the bridge improvements was being transferred to another account to pay for expenses of this year because of budget constraints. And Tom Widmer and I talked about the bridge, and we were anxious to get the bridge moving forward, and hopefully this year, because there were still substantial funds in the budget. To make a long story short, there is no more money in the budget for the bridge this year. At the last meeting, which was, and this came up since I called this meeting a few weeks ago, to sort of get everybody back up to speed and get going on the project, it became necessary for the town council to transfer the remainder of the money that had been allocated to build the bridge this year to other funds. And in all candor, those funds were necessary because of legal expenses the town incurred in connection with the Lodge Board of Zoning Adjustment matter and the Board of Adjustment matter and the legal proceedings that are still ongoing in connection therewith. So essentially, the money for that effort are substantial, I would say 90%, at least 90% of the money from that effort basically came from the money that had been allocated to build the bridge. So once again, we're back to square one, but well, I won't say that. We're not back to square one. And there's other things to talk about. And I guess this is sort of moving into new business that is, it was different than I anticipated reporting several weeks ago, but the status of funds in the current year's budget is zero. But Ben Blackburn here, our interim city manager or administrator, is preparing the budget for next year. And Ben, you want to just report whether you believe there will be funds in that budget and the extent of those funds?
Well, Mike. Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner Blake, and thank you for those comments. Town staff is in the process of preparing its fiscal year 22-23 operating budget, and we have committed monies to the amount of $110,000 for the Texas Road Bridge conversion project. It is in the budget at this time. Now, whether it stays in the budget, that's up to revenue streams as well as commissioners' decisions as well as public input. But right now, staff has submitted that project in the upcoming operating budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
For just for everyone's knowledge, basically the staff prepares recommendations on the budget to the town council. Those will be given to us at a formally at a time certain as May the 1st or and at that point, by the end of June, the town council will enact the final budget. So it's quote in the budget in the sense it's being recommended by staff, but it will, whether it is actually in the budget or not will depend on the final budget resolution approved by the town council before July 1 or sometime before then. Then let me also ask to give Commissioner Tom Widmer credit. Tom has served as a liaison between our town and the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And Metropolitan Planning Organizations are essentially planning organizations established through federal funding mechanisms, mainly transportation, to establish transportation priorities and oversee projects. And Tom brought to the attention of Ben and myself a possible program that is available through the Metropolitan Planning Organization for federal funding that might be applicable to at least when Tom and I initially talked about it, phase 2 of the bridge project as opposed to phase 1. At that stage, we still thought we had phase 1 funds in this year's budget, and in fact, to move forward with that. Ben, let me let you summarize where we're at with that particular.
Yes, sir. The French Broad River Metropolitan Planning Organization has what they have a grant funding program, which is the local administered pedestrian projects. And the town of Montreat has submitted a grant for the amount of $191,000. We feel based on engineering quotes that the $191,000 would cover both phase 1 and phase 2 of the proposed conversion. So that grant has been submitted, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that we will hear something sometime in May to early June about the funding status. There is one caveat that I would like to share with all those in attendance and hearing. The funding cycle doesn't begin until October of 2027. Now, we can move that forward a little bit in the sense that if some projects are sitting out there and say, well, we're not prepared to move on them until 2028, or even some projects that are ready to move now. But the earliest that monies could be spent would be probably sometime in the summer or fall of 2025. So we're looking several years down the road, and it's a 80-20 split, but it's several years down the road before any monies could be reimbursed to the town for any work on the Texas Road Bridge conversion. Commissioner Blake, would you like me to also address at this time the other avenue? That we're
Yes,
looking
if you would, please.
and I would give, and thank you for mentioning Commissioner Widmer. He worked really tirelessly on this LAP grant, both here with staff as well as with the MPO staff. So good shout out to him for his noble efforts. Also, we were reminded at a previous commissioners meeting of the COVID relief monies that Buncombe County would be administering. Talking with some of the staff in Buncombe County, we decided to proceed with a grant proposal for COVID relief. It may be somewhat of a stretch. They're looking at infrastructure, but it's broadband infrastructure or health related for COVID monies. But nonetheless, we submitted a grant under the infrastructure guidelines for $191,000, again, with the supporting documentation from the engineering firms that we would hope would complete both phases 1 and 2. So we've got that grant out there, and those monies, hopefully, if awarded, would come in a lot quicker than sometime in 2025.
Okay. And just to sort of discuss this in concept, we've applied for both phases in this grant, but we are also putting the money in the budget. And if we can get the money in the budget, if we can spend the money and build the first phase, that's the goal, I think. But we may not get it in the budget. And so these grants for both phase 1 and phase 2 are backup sources of funding if we're unable to get what we've got now. It is anticipated, though, or that it'll take us a couple of years to get to phase 2, so that either of these other funding requests may be money we want to use for all or a portion of phase 2. In other words, it would maybe allow us to do we've submitted the phase 2, this committee ended up recommending, which was the plans were, I don't want to say bare bones, but they were modest. And it would allow us to do some extra things. It would allow us to raise money, not just to do the covered bridge, but to pay without other funds, and for money we raised to do some more additional things to make the project even better. So I think, though, I need to mention that we also, during this whole period, when we thought we were going to have money for the bridge, sent out bids request. Again, a month ago, we didn't realize we would have to be taken to the bridge in order to pay for the legal fees. And so we did get bids in, and I don't want the committee to not understand that it was a very disappointing process. We literally sent the bids out to hundreds of potential bidders and received one bid. And that one bid was for over $300,000, well in excess. Barry Creason, our head of our public works, is going to be working on the problem, though. I don't think it's an issue of the fact that we can't do the first phase for $110,000. I think it's a function of the exact time we live in, with no certainty. Barry actually thinks this one company just doubled what their estimate was or tripled it, and really wasn't interested. Obviously, Barry's going to be looking at doing some of the work in-house to save money, he's also, we may end up trying to go out and at least pre-negotiate with some folks to get some additional interest in this project. But I have not lost hope that we can't build the first phase for around the $110,000 number. And certainly not much more than that, but we are waiting. There are two, is it state or federal inspectors that are going to be coming by to look at the bridge in early June, as I recall Barry saying. He's going to meet on the site with those state inspectors. It was troubling to me, but Barry did mention, and I'll just advise the committee, Barry mentioned at the council meeting last week that he feels like the bridge, some aspects of the bridge, and I think he was referring to the head walls, may be in worse shape than the engineer's report had identified. He'll know more about that once the state inspectors come. And Ben, if you could, I'd like to be there at that meeting if at all possible. Okay. But that's still another wrinkle in this problem. But that's where we are. I had hoped when I sent out the notice for this meeting to be reporting much better news to the committee that we were actually getting going with phase one, and therefore should be turning our attention to getting down the details of phase two and perhaps raising money or looking at augmenting the future funds we hope to receive for phase two. But that's not where we are today. Again, that only occurred these developments only occurred in the last week. So there's nothing at this stage for the committee to do other than to be aware of all of these recent developments. I would certainly members of the committee may want to be cognizant that the town council will be looking at including money for phase one in the budget. And if you so desire, you're encouraged the town council to keep that money in the budget as the staff will probably recommend. So we hopefully will be moving forward with the phase one next year. And that's sort of the status of things. Ben, do you have anything further to add? Are there any questions by any of the committee members about? Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I just, can I speak from my heart?
Yes, absolutely.
This is totally frustrating. I mean, 4 years. I took a picture of this beautiful little bridge about 20 miles from here. And I can't believe it, and the creek's the same size. I can't believe they spent over $20,000 private bridge on beautiful little bridge. And this is almost comical. 40 years, $300,000 bill bid that this person giving the money that's going to benefit the whole community. Lawyers' fees for something that the town didn't do. It's just crazy. Crazy. And also, like last year or the year before, I made a proposal to put some flowers, to do something. We do it ourselves. We put some flower pots. No, you can't do that. And it has something to do with structure. You can't do the little picnic area by it. Why can't we do it? It's just, it's so silly. It's frustrating. It's silly. And I just makes me, I love our town council. We have wonderful people on it. We have wonderful people in our community that we sue each other. We get these horrible lawyer bills that the town has to end up paying for people that live there. It's just ridiculous. This is supposedly a Christian community. And it's, anyway, I'm getting that off my chest, but that's the way I feel. And I think that my proposal is at least give us money or let us raise money or something. You know, I've got lots on my plate and I'm not volunteering to do this. But to beautify the place, to put some picnic tables over there, to make a walkway, to put flowers around, to show something for how many meetings this committee's had, how much we talked about this. It's so simple. It's so simple to do. Or can we even privatize the area and let a private person do it? Can we build a private bridge? Donate the property to someone that doesn't have all these regulations hanging over? I don't know. I can't imagine. Other bridges here sure didn't cost $300,000. And this bridge that I saw was beautiful bridge.
Walter?
I echo what Tom just said. It's really irritating that our money is being spent on lawyers. I realize you have to make tough decisions. I didn't know this. Does anyone know this? Can we somehow let the town know that the longer this thing is going on, which we don't have anything to do with it, it's costing all of us things like a bridge. And I mean, I would rather that find an alternative, cut the power off to the MRA and those homes that are suing the MRA, just like they're not suffering. I mean, I know they're paying those bills, but why in the world we have to give up stuff is really irritating. We've waited long enough. We're trying to do something that brings people together. We're the ones doing something positive. It's just so frustrating that an issue between the largest entity in Montreat and folks who don't live here is derailing this. And I want people to know that.
Last council meeting, this was all shared publicly, and all the areas that we had issues in as far as funding were really laid out. And so if people read the minutes, read through the Montreat memo, and even look at the council meeting, you'll get a real feeling of how it's going out there.
And all this did just happen last week. In other words, before getting the agenda package for last Thursday's meeting, I had no idea this was coming. As I say, when I scheduled this meeting, it was to announce, hey, we're moving forward. And we got all this bad news literally in that agenda package, the bid, the money we transferred, everything. So the all turned upside down. John or Robin on Zoom, do you have any comments, and can they make? Okay. Okay.
Can you
Well,
hear me, Mason?
yes, Robin.
Yeah. I too echo the frustration of the committee, because it's like we take a step forward and 2 or 3 steps backward, and we get excited and then we get deflated. I have a couple of questions. One is, do we have a time frame on when we might hear something about the COVID relief grant for infrastructure? I didn't hear that time frame, whether we would be eligible for that or not.
That's a very good question. I'm not very certain on the exact time period, but I would expect it would be late summer or early fall. This will go before the Buncombe County Commissioners for their consideration.
Okay. One other thing that probably is not something that can be solved today, but it would might be something very complicated, but what Tom said about, you know, setting aside the property or privatizing, or, you know, I don't want to get into it today, but I'd like to have a discussion with Ben or Mason or whatever about any creative avenues that we might not have thought about that would benefit the community and the town, where you know, I don't know if you could deed property and then deed it back to the town based on, or how grant money plays into that. I know it would not be something we would do until we hear about at least the first one, the COVID relief grant money, because you know, if you hear about that and it can be sooner than 2025, then I'm sure that would be something we would really like to consider. So I didn't mean to get roundabout, but I just would like to have a discussion at another time about any creative possibilities that we might pursue. And I
Okay.
appreciate everybody's concern. It's almost like we feel like the bridge is the last thing to get considered. And I know it's because everything else is ongoing and important. You can't cut some of that other part of the budget, but I do think, even echoing what Walter said, there may be some way that, and I don't know that it would come from the bridge committee because we're a subset of the town, where, you know, people get some kind of an informational letter. A lot of people don't read all the minutes that say, you know, this is something that's been worked on and been discussed and been pursued, and this is why this is not happening. So I'm just throwing those little thoughts out there.
Thanks, Robin. Understand. You know, and again, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news here, everybody. I understand everyone's frustration. I mean, the good news is, though, that, you know, with some good fortune, we will have the money for phase one back in the budget for this year. And we will have Barry, if we get a good report with these inspectors in early June, that 110 number is still a good number. We feel, you know, hopefully we can get a contract in the coming year and move early on getting it out to get phase one done next year. But that's, but I say that, but none of that's guaranteed. None of that's guaranteed. It's not guaranteed it'll be in the budget, and it's not guaranteed that we can still do it for 110. So.
Real interesting. I'm looking straight ahead and there's the creek with the bridge over it. And I wonder what that bridge, that goes over to up on Lookout Road. Was that a private bridge or a public bridge? I imagine it was public, but all it links is some private houses. And I bet you that bridge didn't cost more than $10,000. I wonder why we can't do. I love the idea of a covered bridge, but I don't know. I'm just ready to have a pretty bridge, whatever. And I'd like to go back to that. What are the reasons that we can't beautify the bridge we have? Make a little picnic area right now, maybe till 2025. Why can't we do that? Is that still the policy of the town? Can't do that? Or is it out with the last?
Mr. Frisk, I'm not aware of any hurdles that would prevent anyone from doing that with the town's approval. course. That's Angie, are you aware of any policies or procedures?
It was nixed the last time I made this.
Okay.
Structural.
Tom, I think this inspection in early June is supposed to be a safety inspection, that's what Barry indicated. I don't, it's not, I think Barry indicated this was a safety inspection. I think if the bridge is safe for pedestrian traffic, which from all reports again, those are just verbal reports, but that it is. I see no reason why the town couldn't allow the beautification of that area as long as it was consistent with limiting the traffic across the bridge to pedestrian traffic. I also see there's no reason why the town couldn't put up some temporary handrails on each side of the bridge, do some other things. So no, I don't see that. And then in fact, if we're not moving directly into phase one fairly quickly, I can promise you I'll bring up before the council after I'll work with staff to get a proposal together and consult this committee. And then once we get agreement from the committee, go to the council and propose some beautification efforts. If we're not able to get phase one going next year, we'll go somewhere and do something.
To follow up on Robin and some of what Walter had suggested, making the town of Montreat, the residents here, more aware of this situation. Could we not talk about, like we had talked about 3 or 4 years ago, fundraising, beautify that area and maybe have a picnic or fundraiser and just begin to make people very aware of it. And maybe raise our money, some of it privately. It's just a suggestion.
And we may end up doing it. Again, hopefully the federal funds may allow us to use money we raise to do even additional beautification efforts. For example, particularly the park, which Tom suggested, and I still think ought to be, frankly, a centerpiece of the project. I think it's important that we try to include the park in the project. It's not necessarily in the funding we seek from these proposals to grant proposals, but I think it's an important part of the project. Jane believes so. I know Kent Otto believes it's a great idea, and Tom Widmer as well. So I think we've got a majority of the members of the commission that would love to see that done. There's not money to do it, frankly. Money is our precious commodity as a town council, but there's the will to do it if the money's available.
Mason, am I correct that a couple of years ago, the town had to pay out certain monies to an individual over an issue of a housing issue? This could happen every year. There's no guarantee that the money that is budgeted for next year will not have to go towards something else, which makes finding alternative sources really important if it is not high enough priority that it might get cut the next time. So I would think we really need to be thinking creatively about funding this, especially if we may get some of this money, but I don't want to wait 5 years. I mean, for me, it comes down to this, and we need to get the word out. Save the bridge. Stop the lawsuit. We need to come up with our own little thing. We need to have our own color ribbons and our own signs. I wish we could go to everybody who's got a sign in the yard and tell them, did you know the bridge is not going to be able to be built because of what's going on? They have no idea. I'm sure most people don't know that. I really appreciate though everything Mason you've done and everybody else. The irritation is not with you all. If we could get what we wanted, we'd have had this done years ago. But I do feel like if we're always waiting on funding, we could be waiting forever.
Well, and that's why I say if we get the money in this year's budget, we will move forward with getting that money committed and the contract signed so that we can't, we'll have to go somewhere else, unfortunately. You know, this, you know, but by the time we got ready and sent bids out, this emergency popped up. Large bills came shortly after the first of the year, a number of large bills from attorneys, attorneys fees, including last week, over $25,000 bill. So the fees, total fees now in cost, internal cost, are roughly $125,000. You can see why we don't have money for the bridge. Here's your bridge. Okay, Ben, do you have anything else?
No, sir, Commissioner Blake, but thank you
All right.
for your comments and the
Well, we
committees.
thank you, and Ben is the sole reason we've got he came up with the idea of putting our bait in the water on the Buncombe County COVID grant. And so thank you for that. We appreciate it, for your creativity and making the effort to get that grant application in. That gives us two bites at the apple anyway. Okay, Robin, thank you very much for attending via Zoom. And do you have any final comments, Robin?
I just want to thank you, Mason and Ben, for all that you've done and for the committee kind of standing strong. And I think I'm very hopeful that we'll soon move forward. And I think we just need to continue to have discussions about, you know, how we can move forward and maybe have some alternatives if, you know, funding doesn't come through. And we maybe, instead of waiting for that, maybe just need to have some discussions about that. But anyway, thank you all.
I think it's a good idea and probably ought to be the subject of our next meeting. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Before we do we need to think about setting,
Good suggestion, Jane.
we want to stay out there at the forefront.
Yeah, I think it would be, we wouldn't want to meet until probably the latter part of June, because we won't be working with full information until then. I would think by the latter part of June, we will know with relative certainty. First, we'll know about the safety inspection. And we'll have had, you know, Barry will have had some sort of, I think, better idea on the cost and whether we can get it done in the neighborhood of 110. And we will also be close to certain about whether we can count on that 110,000 being in next year's budget. So I think setting a meeting at some point in the latter part of June would be good. Everybody will be here in town. You got a date you'd like to suggest, Jane?
I'm looking at June and the council meeting in June is June the 10th. Maybe that Tuesday, the 14th.
June the 14th? Robin, does that work for you?
Yes.
All right.
It's Flag Day.
Same time, same place. 2 o'clock here.
Would that be for sure after the inspection is done?
Yes, well, I'll let you know if it's not, but I believe it was the first week of June that the state inspectors were going to be here. 6th or 7th, I think he said, but I don't have my notes in front of me. I'll double check when Barry gets back. He's out of town. He's on vacation. Okay, then everybody pencil it in for June 14th, and I'll get everybody if that doesn't work out. But All right, anything else? If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn? All right, Walter, Tom seconded. Without objection, the meeting is adjourned. And again, thanks everyone for attending.